Just waiting on some little birds here. Trying to stay as quiet as possible. Nothing yet.
This is the Canon EOS R6 Mark II. If you're looking for a full frame hybrid camera that can shoot a huge variety of subjects, this might be the right body for you. But why this one? Why not the original R6 or one of the other close competitors like the Sony a7 IV? Well, today we're going to have a play with this, do some tests so you can see exactly what it's capable of. The R6 Mark II is a truly hybrid camera. Inside we've got a 24.2 megapixel CMOS full frame sensor, not stacked though, so bear that in mind. We also have a pretty impressive video spec, which I'll get to a little bit later. To start off with, I want to try some of the continuous frame rates. Now it is similar in terms of the original when it comes to the mechanical shutter. We get 12 frames per second, but in electronic shutter, we get 40 frames per second with AF and AE. That is going to be worth trying out. Using the electronic shutter can cause real issues for rolling shutter in lots of different cameras. But in the R6 Mark II, it's actually pretty good. And the great thing about that means that you can actually make use of that 40 frames per second. You can pop on the electronic shutter, stick it on the highest continuous frame rate, and you can capture movement. I'm just going to have Connor here run towards me using the AF on the highest frame rate, electronic shutter. Let's see how it gets on. Right, ready, go. It's very speedy and I can't see any distortion at all. Go. Held focus, square was right over his eyes. Really impressive. Difference though between that 12 frames per second and the 40. The smoothness and when you watch it back, it's crazy. You don't get long with it, it's a short burst. I could only get a small section of Connor running, but if that was first kiss at a wedding, you're not going to miss a moment there, you're going to get the perfect shot. This is a very important continuous frame rate test. If you're working in high-paced environments or places where there's loads of movement and you don't want to miss what's going on, then the R6 Mark II has raw 30 frames per second burst mode, which means it will capture images up to half a second before you press the shutter, so you don't miss anything priceless. Oh my god, that's one of the best pictures I've ever taken. That's the cutest thing I've ever seen in my life. These tiny mice aren't really what we came here for, but I am so impressed. I'm shooting through glass with a 70-200 f4, and it's eye also focusing on all the mice. So I see that as great, to be honest. I won't be photographing anything else today. In fact, I'm not actually going to finish this video. That's the end. Okay, bye. Now seems a good time to tell you about IBIS. If you've seen any of my reviews before, you know I'm a massive fan of in-body image stabilization. I think it adds so much flexibility to the way you can shoot. The R6 Mark II has up to 8 stops with selected lenses. It's been so helpful here while I've been shooting, trying to hold the 500mm out like this to get the maximum reach that I can. If you want to see just how well it works, here is a side-by-side of it turning on when I half press the shutter. Now for my favourite unscientific test, which is just to see how long I can handhold a long exposure with the R6 Mark II. I'm just going to start off at 2.5 seconds. Remember, this isn't about the picture, it's just to see if I can handhold it. So, Yeah, bang on. 4 seconds. It's not bang on sharp, but it's pretty blimmin' good. Now I am just going to put on the digital image stabilization just to see what that gives me. But let me see if I can get around 5. Yeah, sharp. 5 seconds. As much as I love IBIS for stills because I'm lazy and I don't want to get on my tripod all the time, it's also brilliant for video. Love this 70-200. Look how tiny this is, look. So great, so light, such a good little setup. Although it's the middle of the day, we have found somewhere that's a little bit darker to show off some of the low light capabilities of this R6 II, so you can see how it performs at higher ISOs. Now, it is worth bearing in mind this isn't a stacked sensor, so you're likely going to see a little bit of a quality drop-off when using the electronic shutter at higher ISOs in a low light environment. It's worth just bearing that in mind. So here are some tests. This is the R6 original versus the R6 Mark II. This can go up to 102,400 ISO, but unless you're about to capture Bigfoot in the middle of the forest at night, I suggest you go nowhere near that ISO level because you're getting really, really noisy up there. But it can focus down to minus 6.5 EV. So if you are in the middle of the forest and Bigfoot is standing in front of you and you have a half slither of a moon, you should actually be all right. This should autofocus no problem. The R6 Mark II has dual pixel CMOS AF2 and AI-based deep learning, which means that it can focus up to 80% faster than the original, apparently. But that is a big claim, so we're going to do some tests and see how it gets on. As you can see from that autofocus test, not only did it stick with me pretty well, which I'd expect from dual pixel CMOS AF2, but also it stuck with the original subject, me, when Connor walked through the frame, which I was really happy about because the original R6, it could jump around a little bit sometimes. Sometimes it could get a bit confused when someone walked through the frame. So I was really happy to see that it stuck with me, the original subject. As you'd expect, the R6 Mark II doesn't just detect people, it can detect lots of subjects. I'll read them out for you, because my memory is not that good. So for people, it's eyes, heads, bodies, and faces, which means obviously when they turn around, as you saw just a second ago, you get that nice box around the head. Cats of any description, so lions to domesticated. Dogs, again, we're talking wolves, dingoes, and your normal pet. We've got horses, including zebras, apparently, birds, including in flight, cars, it can track the driver, open top cars, motorbikes on the road or the racetrack, trains, steam, electric or diesel, which seems obvious to me, but anyway, as well as aircraft, including helicopters. I think nowadays, to be honest, AF, especially the dual pixel CMOS AF2 that we've got in this, is just generally very, very good. It works great across a lot of models. In all fairness, we see this in some of the competitors as well, right? So things like the Sony a7 IV, also fantastic subject recognition, great autofocus. So it's something I'd expect, and I'm very glad it's there and that it's good. The AF can adapt to how somebody is moving, the speed, the direction, the pose in a frame, and it just makes the AF as accurate as possible. Let us know how you think it's doing with Connor dancing around behind me. I'd love to know your thoughts on the R6 Mark II so far. Do something mad, do something mad. Go crazy. Because of those really fast continuous frame rates, it also means you can shoot HDR of moving subjects because you can get enough frames quickly enough, basically. And that's great. If you're in like a really high contrast area like this, maybe you're taking pictures at a rally stage, or you're doing something with, I don't know, some off-road running, it might be really, really useful for you to be able to do that in camera. I'm sorry I'm stuttering. I'm getting bitten to pieces by midges. Please like and subscribe. On the original R6, there were some great video specs, but there was a little bit of a rolling shutter problem, as there is with lots of these type of cameras. Now, with the R6 Mark II, that is massively improved. And if you need to do this loads with your camera, then it is worth taking that into account, because it's great in 4K 60p, which is impressive. But if you drop it down to a 1.6 crop, it is barely visible at all. You can shoot up to 4K 60p internally, and that is oversampled from 6K, which is pretty great. They've removed the 30-minute cap for shooting, so you can shoot for ages and ages and ages, especially if you're shooting like 4K 30p. If you're in 4K 60, obviously at some point you're going to see a little bit of overheating happening, but you should be able to get about 40 minutes, depending on the atmosphere that you're in. Now, if you want a bit more slow motion, you can drop down into full HD and you get 180 frames per second. It is worth noting you can only shoot in long op. There is no all intra option within the R6 Mark II. Removing that 30-minute cap allows you quite a bit of flexibility if you're shooting commercially with this camera. So let's say you're filming a conference or a training day, something like that, where you need this to roll and roll and roll. You've got that opportunity with this. Now, you do have a USB-C port, which you can use for power delivery. You can run it off a portable charger, or you can plug it in, so you can keep the camera going. That's great. You have 2 UHS 2 SD card slots. Great again, we love a dual card slot. However, you cannot hot swap the cards. So you can't just keep going and going and going as your cards fill up. And in fact, if you have the camera on and you open the card slot, the camera turns off. So you absolutely cannot hot swap cards whatsoever. So if you are doing something like that, just remember you're going to need a couple of big SD cards in there. IBIS is of course available when shooting video, and it even has a digital enhanced IBIS mode as well. If you're anything like us when you're on shoot and you're trying to get multiple different things at the same time, vertical shots for TikTok, things for Instagram, you need to shoot in all different ratios, the R6 Mark II has an aspect ratio marker that you can have on the screen so that you can compose for multiple shots. I think that's really useful, so you can get your main YouTube video shoot in landscape and have the aspect ratio marker so that you can see for your nice 9:16 Instagram reel. Today we've been shooting a lot of different subjects, wildlife, animals, things like that. And if you're in a situation where there's loads of stuff going on, you don't want to miss a shot, but sometimes we are just a little slow. That is a great time to make use of the R6 Mark II's pre-record function. It records about 5 seconds before you press the shutter. And in my opinion, that is the difference between a great shot and a complete throwaway. The amount of times I've just not quite turned quick enough to get that one bit of action because my finger was just a little bit too slow. I think that'll be really useful to a lot of people out there. That's something I'd definitely be really excited about if this was my camera. Right, let's take a look at the design. So first off, it's weather and dust resistant, which is a good job because it's chucking it down. On the left-hand side, we have a USB-C in, which I've chatted about. We also have that micro HDMI port. I think that's really poor in a camera of this caliber, but at least we have it, right? And we can do that 6K out. We've got a mic input, headphone out, and we've got a remote input as well. So nicely stacked on that left-hand side. My favorite piece of Canon marketing for this camera is about the new off, lock, on switch, which sits just above this dial here, which is, genuinely the quote is, turn on and off with a single finger. Which is great because normally I just kick my camera repeatedly down the road until it switches on. I'm being facetious, I understand what they mean. This is better for one-handed use, so if you are just holding your camera like this, it does make it very, very easy ergonomically. I do think that could have been worded better though. Now, what I would say about that off, lock, on switch is that a couple of times today I accidentally knocked it into lock, which is a bit annoying. Worth just keeping an eye out for that. But it does mean that on this side we get a dedicated stills to video switch, which is really exciting. I think any camera that's pushing itself as a hybrid has to have one of those switches, so really happy about that. The mode dial on the top here, we get a C1, C2 and C3 switch. So that means you can set up 3 different custom settings on the mode dial itself. On the side here, we've got the dual card slot for SD cards, and we've got the battery slot on the bottom. It takes the LPE6 series of batteries, which I think everyone would be fuming if it didn't, and it can take everything back to the original LPE6, and of course you can use the LPE6 NH. Now, if you are using that newer LPE6 NH, then you get 50% more shots than if you used the LP6NH in the original R6. That is a massive step up with the same battery in a very similar camera. I think that's great. So you're now looking at about 760 shots. However, we all know that the way they rate batteries is absolutely ridiculous. So today I've taken like a couple of thousand today, and I've just changed battery because it was flashing. It hadn't even actually died. So I would say yes, okay, 760 shots, but realistically on a day out, 2 batteries is probably gonna last you a whole day shooting, no issue at all. If you have an iPhone and you want to quickly transfer your images off the camera, then you are in luck because this has MFI, which is made for iPhone. It means you can connect this with a cable to your iPhone to get a really stable connection for transfers. If you're an Android user, there's nothing for you, sorry. I'm only joking. Of course, if you are an Android user, all is not lost. You do have Bluetooth version 5.0 and you have 5 GHz Wi-Fi as well. So you can still connect up your camera to your smart devices, transfer your images, it's no problem at all. You just can't do it with a cable. Actually, I don't know that. Let me know in the comments actually if you've done that. If you have an R6 II already and you've connected it up but you just don't have the MFI thing, I don't know if it would work. Let me know if it does. That'd be great for everyone to know. So make sure you pop it down there. If you want to use the R6 Mark II as a webcam, you can. You can get a full HD 30 frames per second webcam with this, and you can just plug and play. You don't need any extra software, which is great because some of them are an absolute nightmare. Also, if you want to do firmware updates through this, you can do it from the app. You can use the Canon Camera Connect app and do firmware updates into the camera, which is pretty good, makes things really nice and easy. Some of the newer features on the R6 Mark II that we've taken a look at today might make this the right body for you, but actually the original R6 is still a really good option. And some of the competitors are too, thinking things like the Sony a7 IV or the Panasonic S5 II or S5 IIX, they're worth a look as well. If you've got some comments on how this performed, we'd love to know your thoughts, so make sure to put them in the comments. And if you've got any thoughts on what we should look at next, maybe, that'd be great to hear too. But for now, I'm gonna get back in the car before I freeze. Thank you very much for watching. We'll try our best to get back to you with all the information that we, sorry, something was biting my head so hard. Oh my God, I'm so bitten, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right, rolling.